And there we go. And then all participants, please, you have noticed that you were muted upon entry. If you have a question, you feel free to use the chat or to unmute yourself at any time to ask a question of today's presenter. And now I'd like to introduce Scott Oser, who is excited to be joining us from Southern California. Scott created a consulting business that focuses on helping organizations with sales and marketing, sponsorship, development, copywriting, vendor negotiation, website evaluation, strategic development, print product optimization, and much more. Scott has over 20 years of marketing experience in the association and publishing industries. Before starting the firm, Scott Oser Associates, he worked for the market leaders like National Geographic Society and the AARP. After living in the Washington, D.C. area since he was a kid, he recently moved his life and his business to the West Coast. So please welcome Scott Oser.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you everybody else for joining today. I wanted to start by saying that I know I'm going to hit the elephant in the room right away. I know things are crazy right now. This presentation that I have put together for you was originally created before everything hit the fan. So what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to do my best to do, is insert some new facts and some new things that I have been hearing throughout the presentation, but the basis of the presentation is going to be around best practices in recruitment, renewal, and engagement. I know we are not in our traditional, typical best practices world right now because things are so different. But many of these, if not all of these, will still be very pertinent and relevant to what you guys are doing. And things are going to turn around at some point. Doesn't mean we can't learn from where we are now. And I think we are all going to learn about some new things and some new things to try based on what we're having to deal with right now. But I wanted to let you know that I'm not ignoring current situation, but this presentation is not going to be fully about, okay, what do we do now because of coronavirus? What do we do now in these three critical areas because of coronavirus? Like I said, I'm going to put some anecdotes in there, some other information, but this presentation is not going to be just about what we do because of coronavirus, because that's going to be over and done with. Hopefully sooner rather than later, but at some point it is going to be over and done with, and we've got to learn from it and kind of move on. And these tips are focused on that. The other thing before we start I want to address is that virtual meetings are new for most of us. I'll be honest with you, this type of virtual meeting is new for me. I've done a lot of webinars, and webinars, as you know, are typically and traditionally one way. I talk at you for an hour. And yeah, you can put in questions and yeah, we can put in some surveys, but the typical webinar technology is I speak at you and flip through slides for an hour. This, Vanessa and I talked and we agreed that we're going to experiment a little bit today, and it's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable for me probably. It's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable for you, and it may feel a little bit weird too, because originally this presentation was supposed to be done live and in person. And when you do events live and in person, and I'm not saying you can't do this virtually, but it is new in many ways to many people to do it virtually. You get that face-to-face interaction, and you can turn to a colleague next to you and you can take 5 minutes and do an activity and it doesn't feel weird. Now we're all sitting in our own houses, or a couple of us I saw are sitting outside, which I wish I was, but it would be too loud and too windy here, so then you guys wouldn't hear anything. But now I'm going to break you out of that normalcy of just being spoken to in a webinar and ask you to do some activities during this. The other point that I want to make is that I'm going to ask you to share in the chat box. I'm not going to read out to everybody. Like, a lot of times face-to-face, you do the report outs. I'm not going to read all of the responses. But as part of this recording, Vanessa is able to share with you the chat room as well. So I am going to ask people to share big ahas. I'm going to ask people to share ideas. I'm going to ask people to say things that they're thinking about. And the value there is to be able to go back to it and see what people are thinking, what ideas come across, and you can use that later. So again, it's going to feel a little bit weird. I get it. I've done this once before and it had a lot of success. So we're going to try it again. And I know, like I said, the only way I can explain it, it's going to be a little bit weird. It's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable for many of you. But my number one goal is at the end of the day for you to walk away with tips and tricks and things that you can do at your own organization. This is really designed to be individual and personal, and you'll see that as we go through the activities. So if there's any technical glitches, as Vanessa just put in the chat room, let her know. Some of it, unfortunately, we can't really control. Hopefully I won't have any glitches on this end, but the good and the bad of virtual is that you are reliant on your own technology at your house. If your kids are on Xbox and they're sucking all your Wi-Fi, this is not going to work very well. So you've got to go, get them off the Xbox or whatever else they're messing on. I've got 2 kids here and my girlfriend in the other room. We're all on Wi-Fi right now. I told them to get off the Xbox because the Xbox seems to be a giant Wi-Fi sucker for whatever reason. But still, I've got my phone here on Wi-Fi. My girlfriend's got her phone. She's got her iPad and everything else. So we're probably running 7 devices right now. Fortunately, I have not had any issues. Vanessa and I tested it. So before you get frustrated with us because of lack of functionality, and we're happy to take ownership if there's problems, but watch what the other Wi-Fi issues are, because unfortunately Verizon and all those guys say you've got 100,000 billion gigabytes that we can go through. Well, that's if you're hardwired, not if you're using Wi-Fi. And now that I had the Spectrum guy here because my neighbors are doing something, and he said to me, you know what, you guys, your Wi-Fi is probably going to be slow because everybody is home using internet right now. And that's the truth. So hopefully we won't run into any issues, but if there are any weird issues, like you can't hear the conversation, if you can't use the chat box, let Vanessa know and we'll get that figured out. So, all right, enough of the background and the backdrop. What we're here to talk about is membership recruitment, renewal, and engagement. And that is my background. Vanessa went into more detail than you guys really need to hear about my background, but I started over 20 years ago as a membership guy. And so I truly believe that membership is the heart and soul of pretty much every association. And that's really where it starts. That allows you to create the community, that allows you to sell the products, all sorts of different things. But so we're going to focus on those 3 areas today. I really say it's a cycle, it's a circle. You could say you start with recruitment, you could say you start with renewal, and then now the engagement piece is what is sort of new, or at least the term engagement is kind of new. There was a time years ago where we used to say, okay, where are people in their membership cycle? And you join or renew, then you've got, I don't know, 8-9 months in the middle where now it's the engagement phase where you're trying to get people involved in the association. You're trying to show them your value. You're trying to get them to use your products and services, all those kind of things. And then you go right back into renewal again. And I'll repeat this, but to me, the renewal piece is really where you're asked, and the way we define it, I'm defining it today, is that's when you get someone to pay for the next year's dues. So engagement, it's recruitment and renewal. When you get that first payment in or that renewal payment in, then you've got that 9-month-ish period of engagement, and then you've got renewal when you start saying it's time to pay now for the next year. So we'll sort of leave that as the groundwork. And what I want to do, here's what we're going to do today. I'm trying to move chat rooms around and things so I can see. We're going to do a real quick introduction, all right? Just a real quick. And you guys can put this in your chat room. If you want to, say who you are and your organization. But the important, and we're going to do that in a second, but here are the activities we're going to go through. First of all, we're going to have a brief conversation about membership, whether it is dead or not dead. I don't think it is, but we'll talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about some tips for membership recruitment. And I'm going to present some best practices, and as I mentioned, tweak them as much as I can for current times, and then once we come out of this. What is member renewal? We're going to have a real brief thought process or thinking exercise about how your organization is defining member renewal. I sort of gave you what I did, what I think consider renewal, but we'll talk about that for a second. Some tips for membership renewal. Sorry, I'm moving my chat box all over the place. Oop, now my chat box is gigantic. Sorry, you guys. Talk about technical issues. I'm creating them myself. Tips for membership renewal. A definition of member engagement. Some tips for membership engagement. And then the last piece, which is going to be me more or less talking at you, is we're going to put all of this together. And I worked with a client a while ago, and the number one goal was to create what we defined as a 365-day member communication case strategy. And so I'm going to walk through that, and we'll talk about what we did, how we did it, all of those different kind of things, and you'll see how the tips that I bring up and the thought process that you guys go through during the rest of the virtual session will help. That'll reinforce and see how you can put all of those things into action. So that is the plan for the next hour and 15 minutes. All right. Normally I would ask you to raise your hand if everybody's cool with that, but considering I can't see all you guys right now, I'm just going to assume everybody's good to go. All right. So here's the first thing that we're going to do, just to get a little levity, a little introduction here. This chat box is killing me. Sorry. All right, number one, find the chat box. All right, if you haven't found the chat box, I can't help you because it took me about a half an hour to find it myself. But it should be, there you go. George is telling you, grab the lower left corner of the chat window. You can resize it. Oh, that's for me. But yes, I can do that. But so you guys should easily be able to find the chat box. Like I said, a little bit of experimentation here. Sorry about that. And then here's what I want you to do. Just real quickly, we're not going to stop the presentation for now, but put in who you are, the name of your organization, and then here's one thing I want us all to do right now. I can be a little bit spiritual at times, and I like the idea of thinking positively as much as you can. Share one thing. This doesn't have to be business. This can be personal. It can be anything. Just share one thing that you're happy about. And I'll give you 30 seconds to do that. All right, we're getting some awesome things. As I'm scanning through, I find it interesting that a lot of people are saying that they're happy to be at home and be able to work with their family, which I agree with. But then you go on social media and you go online and all you see are those posts that say, I'm going to kill my kids. How do I get away from killing my kids? My kids are driving me insane, which is terrible, right? It's like, come on, you guys, be happy to be at home. And so I think it's awesome that so many people in the chat box just put in, I'm happy to be at home, happy my family is safe, we're all good. So thank you all for doing that. I do want all of us, I'm not your spiritual teacher, but I do want all of us as much as we can to be as positive as we can. I know it's scary. I know this is challenging. I know it's unnerving and nobody knows where this is going right now, but be as positive as you can. So if you can think about one happy thing every day, that's sort of my spiritual guidance for you. All right, so under the membership is dead piece. I've been digging around for a while now, and what I have found are, I think for a period of time, there was a lot of individuals or a lot of word of mouth out in the association space, especially that membership is dead, that membership is just, nobody wants to be a member anymore. People aren't joining. And so what I did was I pulled together a number of different quotes, which I think you guys will find interesting. So if I can get my chat box out of the way, over 52% of the 690 plus associations participating in the study reported a growth in membership versus only 31% reporting a decline. And the reported growth is vigorous with nearly 24% of associations reporting a gain. So this was from the membership marketing benchmarking report that Marketing General did a couple of years ago. If you have not downloaded that report, they're doing it every year. You can go to the Marketing General website. I believe they ask you to register and just give you their name, your name and email information, but it's got a ton of information in there. It's very, very important. But the reason I bring this up is that this shows you, right? And this is again, like I said, I'm going to keep mentioning that some of this is pre-coronavirus. It's pre-COVID-19, but this was before COVID-19, obviously, but membership was growing. And so this quote says, and this data says membership is growing. So then you've got this piece from Sarah Sladek. If you haven't heard Sarah speak or read any of her information, you should check her out too if you have time. But Sarah said a couple of years ago, the era when associations could count on members joining and renewing has passed. So that would lead one to believe, Membership could be dead, probably dead. What is going on with membership? Then you've got Lori, who said this in an article in Associations Now, ASAE's publication. The membership model will continue to be a viable option for associations. At the same time, associations need to be open to new audiences and ways of doing things. All right, so again, counter argument, membership is not dead, membership is very viable, and we should continue to look for membership. So I gave you a little bit of both sides. I used to have another quote in there that showed you how membership is dead, but for sake of time, I deleted that one so that we could keep the conversation going. And what I want to do right now is take about 2 minutes to have you all put into the chat what, from your association perspective, and if you want, you can put your personal perspective, is membership still a viable model for associations? Do we still want to base a good portion of our business model on recruiting, retaining, and renewing members? Is that still viable in today's market? And as I keep looking down, you guys, just so you know, if you actually are watching me on video, I'm looking at my phone for a clock. I'm not just sort of goofing around. All right. It looks like the chat boxes started to slow. So I would say that, and maybe we are skewed and biased because I'm guessing that all of us, if not the large majority of us, have something to do with membership in our organization. So it seems to be pretty obvious from the responses. And in my own opinion, membership is not dead. And this is just sort of a lead in to why this conversation that we're going to have today is so important, because I thought the membership is dead concept and belief for a long time. I think that it's very interesting that during that membership is dead conversation that was happening a year or two ago, Costco membership, Sam's Club membership, all of these member recognition clubs and things from every restaurant, hotel chain, everything, American Express membership, right? You're not a member of American Express. You're not a member of Costco, right? But there is a feeling that is involved with membership. There is a community that is oftentimes involved with membership. So I do think that that is very valuable. I noticed in the chat room that a bunch of people said, especially in times like today. And I think this is true all the time, but I believe that they are right. Even more so today, that sense of belonging, that sense of community, that sense of having a support structure around you, whether you take advantage of it or not, that you get when you are a member is huge. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the premise that membership is not dead, that membership is now, and in my opinion has always been, as important as it has ever been. So we already did our virtual table discussion. And so now I'm going to just launch right into some membership recruitment tips. And some of these are going to be pretty basic, but they are important. And this is really trying to get to the core of, in my experience, and from what I have seen recently and before from paying attention to what a lot of associations are doing, what is really critical for success in these three areas. And we're going to start with membership recruitment. So first of all, mix it up and use multimedia. I like to say this, and the good news is that you guys are going to get a number of Scott Oserisms while we're talking through this presentation. They're not fully made up words, but if you look in the dictionary, if you're Googling them, you're not going to find them because I did kind of make them up. But so mix it up, use multimedia, and this is not my word of the day is not coming out yet, but what I like to say is there are no longer any one-trick ponies. I have been in the business long enough to see when the only way you could reach your members was direct mail. So all we did was mail them, right? That was it. There was no other way to get to them. Then you had mail, and this is scary if anybody remembers this or still does it, fax, then you got phone, then you got email. And for a period of time, all you had was email, right? Everybody wants to go to email. And I think that right now, we are almost back there again. Just think about how overloaded your inbox was before all of the coronavirus started, and think about it now. Everyone is emailing. So from a recruitment perspective, and we could go, I'm not going to go into the conversation of whether now is the right time to do recruitment or not. I think that depends on industry. I think that depends on the outlook and the perspective of your association, your board. I would say that unless something is really, really off or your industry is in dire straits right now, that if you have some membership recruitment strategies and tactics planned, I would recommend that you still doing them, but you change the messaging, right? The messaging right now is going to be the key. I just, fortunately or unfortunately, right before the main struggle with coronavirus happened, one of my clients had me implement I implemented for them a recruitment campaign. The deadline for the offer was yesterday. We still got orders in. I don't know yet whether it's going to have the same results as it had in prior years, but this was a recruitment campaign, cold recruitment, and people responded. We actually sent out a softer reminder notice yesterday letting people know that the deadline was coming up, and we still got calls from people because their back end is a little wonky. And so people were still calling and going, we want to join, but we're struggling a little bit to get into the system. How do we do it? So even yesterday, and these are domestic, these are US based people, even yesterday, they were still looking to join. So my tip is there, mix it up, use multimedia. You can still mail, you can still use email. Now we've got retargeting, we've got all these different mechanisms, but just doing one is not going to allow you to hit to maximize what you're trying to do. Target and segment, this is going to flow through all of the different things that we talk about today, whether it's recruitment, engagement, or renewal. We all live in a world right now, and I don't love making this comparison, but it is reality. We live in an Amazon world. We live in a highly, highly sophisticated technical world where if we are not approaching our members, whether they be our prospects, whether they be companies or whether they be individual members, based on the knowledge that we have about them, then they're going to ignore it. We don't live in a world anymore where you can just throw every benefit you offer at every single person and treat them all the same. If I can use a really simple example where if you're an industry partner, you have industry partnership in your organization, they want something different than, for lack of a better word, I will call your regular members, right? Your regular members have different needs than your industry partners. So you need to communicate with them differently. You need to use what you know about them to at least, and here comes your first Scott Oserism, you need to bucketize them. You don't need to have 20 buckets. You don't need to have 50 buckets, but you need to say, even if you have lack of resources to do a high level of segmentation, you need to at least segment on your basics so that you speak to people based on who they are and what you know about them. That is critical right now. You can't not do that because you get compared to the Amazons in the world. Whether we should be or not, we're getting compared to them and they know everything about us. And so they're targeting and segmenting us like crazy. All right, my chat box is in the way again. All right, here's an example. I'm going to give you guys a real brief example. This is actually the group that I was just saying that we did a recruitment campaign for. We also did some win back. Society for Vascular Ultrasound, which is SVU, they have two different primary categories. One is vascular ultrasound technologist. So not that anybody came on this webinar to learn what a vascular ultrasound technologist does, but they do ultrasound of your veins and your venous systems. And then their other category is physicians. So what we did, we went after both of them, but what we did was we targeted them. So in fact, so RPVIs, and I got to explain this a little bit, RPVIs are the physicians. So in the physician letter, we first of all address them as Dear Dr. So-and-so, and then we put RPVI in there so that we would know that that was applicable to what they did. Then you've got this one. Again, sorry, you guys don't see it all, but I keep moving my chat screen all over the place. But so then the other version of the letter that we sent out, and this is from a letter, was see where it says RVTs, RVSs, and RPHSs. This was for the technologists, and we had data on what certification they had, so we used this as well. And so we were able to target them, whether they were a physician or whether they were a technologist, because otherwise we would have ended up with a cobbled together letter of different benefits that, let's even say 50% of them would not be applicable to the recipient. And why would you do that, right? Nobody wants to go through a letter or an email or anything at this point and try to pick out which pieces are for them and which are not applicable to them. You need to make sure that it's clear. All right. This is a tricky one right now. Increase or create urgency. Normally when you're doing recruitment, you have to have a deadline of some sort. You have to have some sort of a special something, and you have to have a deadline. Otherwise, why is somebody going to act on your offer immediately when they can do it next week, they can do it next month, they can do it next year, and unless they really want to join at that time, they're not going to do it right away, or you're giving them an excuse to not do it right away. I know this is going to be more challenging right now. My recommendation and what I have seen is that now is the time to mention the deadlines and still to create urgency. But even personally, I feel right now, if I get an email across my desk that I happen to see where it's like, dude, this is the third time that we've told you that the deadline is tomorrow. I'm like, really? That's where you're pushing this right now? No, it needs to be softer. It needs to be a little bit different. But there still should be an offer in almost all, if not all, of your recruitment pieces. When it comes to proactive outreach, none of us are going to shows right now. None of us are going to conferences right now. But if you're typically exhibiting at a conference or something like that, you could have a special offer while you're on site. But if you're just handing out membership brochures, those are not going to have urgency created to them. It's going to be informational, and then you're going to want to hope that they come back. But if it's a proactive ask for someone to join on a regular basis, it should have an offer, it should have a deadline, so you need to create that urgency. Frequency counts. In membership recruitment, most people are not going to respond on your first attempt to reach them. You're going to need to go after them more than once. You're going to need to market to them more than once, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I grew up in the world of direct mail, and we would keep people on our prospect list for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. They would be getting the mail piece for 4 years, and then all of a sudden they would decide to join. It doesn't cost you a lot more to keep the right people on your list and continue to market them on a regular basis, but it does take oftentimes more than one hit for somebody to respond. You think about all the emails we're getting right now. We're actually, in some ways, we're getting less marketing messages right now because we are not driving around and seeing billboards. We're not listening to the radio potentially as much as we used to. We're all on probably TV a lot more, so we're getting those messages. We're all on the web a lot more. But by being inside as much as we are, some of our interruptions and some of our exposure has decreased. But even if it hadn't, you think about when it was normal and you were out and about, the number of marketing messages we get a day is gigantic. So we need to stand out. And one way to do that is by being regularly in people's faces so that we have that frequency. Present the right offer. This goes back to sort of my create urgency. What is going to get somebody to join today? What is going to get them to go to your website, put in their credit card, join, return the email, or respond to the email, reply to the direct mail piece? What is it going to be? I personally feel like you're better off doing something that is directly correlated to your business. And so that is what it's got to be, but you need to present an offer. It's not just, hey, join, we like you, you'll like us, join. There needs to be some sort of an offer when you're doing your proactive recruitment. Learn from your past efforts. I have spoken with and heard from a lot of associations over time, and they're not doing a great job of tracking. So they're not able to learn from what they have done in the past. If you've got something out there that hasn't worked, you either got to tweak it and try it again, or you don't do it again and you do something different. But if you don't know what has worked in the past, and I'm going to go over sort of this tracking piece again, because it's that important in my opinion, if you don't do that, then you're never going to get better. You're never going to improve. Don't give it away for free. This is my rant, and I'll be honest with you, this is my rant, but this is what I believe is true, and I have seen this in a lot of places, is giving away membership for free is not a good solution in membership recruitment. Whether it's a free trial or it's we'll give you 25% to 30% off. I believe and have had a lot of success and seen and heard of a lot of success where organizations actually give you more. So give them 14 months for the price of 12. Let them get more or greater exposure to the benefits that they're going to receive as a member. I've always found, and this has been proven in a lot of the testing that I have done and heard of other associations doing, that if you discount it, the ability, or give it away for free, the ability to get them to go to full price the next time is a lot harder. So you're already setting yourself up for a certain level of failure when it comes to renewals. Find the right voices and use their language. Here's just a quick example from SVU. As I mentioned before, they had technologists and they had physicians. So we did two versions, as I said. And on one version of the letter, because the physicians, they actually had a physician director on their board, they would recognize who that person is. So in our letter, we used their president's signature and we also used the physician director's signature. So that's one example. And then for the other people, oops, sorry, I don't even know. I'm going to go back. But that's one example. But the other piece that I wanted to mention right here is inside our organizations as staff, we know lots of acronyms. We know lots of ways that we talk about things, that we describe things. We need to put ourselves in the shoes of our members, of our prospects. So using the acronyms that we understand is not going to really necessarily resonate with them. So every time we write something, every time we try to market something, we need to make sure that we're speaking their language, not ours. And this signature is just one example, that this will resonate a lot more than if we just had JP Hughes, or we also, for the technologists, we only use JP Hughes and not Dr. Dawson, because the technologists don't know who Dr. Dawson is and they're not physicians, so they're not going to do anything with that. So, all right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give you guys a minute, and what we're going to do is we are going to now do a quick idea share. So in the recruitment sector, in the recruitment side of your world, and this is going to be challenging. Like I said, I'm adjusting this as we go along, but we can say, what are you doing? Or what I think actually more accurately now, what have you been doing that, and you'll see I changed some of the slides, but what have you been doing just for recruitment that is, or recently was, really working to bring in members? And again, we're going to share the chat. So the more ideas that you can put in there, the better. But what I would say is, if there's anything that's top of mind, write it right away. Otherwise, think about it a little bit. Think about all of the things that you're doing for member recruitment, and then type in the chat box some things that are working. So what I'm going to do is give you guys about 3 minutes to do that. I feel like I should have had music for this part. And I just saw Janine's post about how they have nurses and membership is still growing. I think that Janine should share that experience with the entire association world, because so many people are so scared right now to prospect and to recruit new members. And if it's working, the more stories we can put out there, I think the better off all associations are going to be. So thanks, Janine, for sharing that. All right, it looks like the chat box has slowed down. I understand not everybody wants to share, but hopefully what my goal is that hopefully as we're doing this, you guys are writing things down and it makes you think about ways that you can improve your own organizations, and there are things that you can do. If you walk away with I was thinking about this the other day. If you walk away with 2 improvements or 2 ideas in each section, recruitment, engagement, and renewal, that you can do to make your life better, to make things more effective in your organization, I'll put this out there for Vanessa and me. I think that we've done our job by getting you guys that, because that's not everything is going to be applicable to everybody, but having 6 things that you can do that you need to think about is probably enough right now in the world that we're living in, that at least you can have some impact and it's not so overwhelming that you sort of put it all aside and say, wow, I got Scott and everybody just gave me 50 ideas. What am I going to do with 50 ideas? I can't do anything with 50 ideas right now. So the more ideas, the better. But if you come away with 2 things here, 2 things in engagement, 2 things in renewal, then that would be awesome. All right. So next phase, I'm actually going to go backwards a little bit. But again, I mentioned recruitment, engagement, renewal. But for this presentation, we're going to go recruitment, renewal, engagement, because I think the engagement piece is the newest, and it actually in some ways is the most important piece of what we do. And it's definitely the longest lasting phase of those 3 phases. So what I want to say real quick is, and I'm going to give you guys again a couple of minutes here, how at your organization do you define renewal? What does renewal mean at your association? And so I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and if you can put that in the chat box on your thoughts, I'll read through it, and then we'll talk about it. And if nobody wants to enter, I'll wait about a minute, and then I'll move into what my definition is. All right, cool. So we've got some different perspectives. Some people say the renewal is value and belonging, as Heidi just said. Some people say it's providing value, and then others are saying it's when you actually pay for that next year of membership. And that's how I actually define renewal. This is sort of a broader, this is more of a corporate definition, but anything that you do that leads to a unit maintaining their status as a unit. So what you need to do is provide the value during the year, but then you actually need to implement strategies to get them to maintain that status, right? You need to get them to pay you to maintain their membership for another year. So that's really how I define renewal, and we're going to sort of use that definition. And I think that you guys were right on top of it. So I don't think this is anything new. But it's really, again, what you do and how you get them to show you or pay you that they're going to be a member for another year. So here's what we want to do. I'm going to go into some tips, and some of these, as I mentioned before, can be used for recruitment, renewal, and engagement. But No, but I put them into the right places that I felt they would have the most impact. So for membership renewal, use your data to your advantage. Anybody who is a member, you should have some information on. It could be their purchasing information. It could be how they joined. It could be who their primary contact is. Any sort of data that you have, and I know the large majority of us will say our AMSs are not the greatest thing in the world. We don't have a ton of information that's easy to access, and you don't have to know everything about everybody. But if you can use your data, purchase data, behavior data, if they're on committees, those kind of things, anything that you can use in your renewal efforts as you're communicating to someone why they should pay you again, you should try and access, right? You can use fields in your letters, you can use fields in your invoices. You should pull that information and use it the way you can, because as members, you're going to know more about them than you would if they're non-members. And back to what I was saying before, segmenting and targeting, you want to approach them based on the information you know. And they want to know that, right? In some ways, you can't be too creepy. You know, you can't say, well, I know that 2 o'clock every day you go for a walk, because that would be weird. But you can say, I know you've been to 3 conferences in the last year. I know you're on these committees and those things. So this is what you're not going to have access to anymore if you don't renew your membership. This is just a stat and a realism and a truth. Almost always first-year members are less likely to, or least likely to renew. I have seen stats, even groups that have an overall renewal rate of 85 to 90%, their first year renewals, their first year members, their first time members are like in 40, 50, 60%. But because the large majority of their members have been around for more than a year and they're renewing at like 90 or so, that 50% still averages out to be 85, 90. But the reason I bring this up is in renewal, in addition to using your data, because one of the other pieces of data you have is how long someone has been a member, first year members need something special. They need something different. They need to be shown in more ways the value of membership. Once they have been a member for a period of time, they are going to be more and more likely to remain a member. Scary / funny story. When I used to work at National Geographic, and it was more of a subscription basis than a membership basis, but we used to offer new member pricing or new subscriber pricing. Then that pricing would be for year 1. We'd bump up price a little bit for year 2. And the people who paid the most were the people who had been members for 3 to 5 years. Because by then we had them, right? We had that many more people. So what did we do? We gouged our best members. We gouged our best subscribers. We charged them the most because we knew that their renewal rate was going to be that much higher, that they didn't pay that close attention to the pricing. I'm not suggesting you do that, but we did it and it worked. So that again proves in dollar figures that that the first year people are going to be the hardest to keep. So you need to put extra effort in there. You also need to be able to identify your first year members. If you can't identify who's a first year member, then you can't really do anything special for them. So there's a couple of little pieces and tips there. Never forget your past. Reach out to lapsed members. This could be considered recruitment in some organizations, and it could be considered renewal in some organizations. It surprises me often when I talk to organizations and I say, when was the last time you reached out to lapsed members? And they go, we don't. Or their definition of a lapsed member is somebody who expired in January and you're reaching out to them in February or March. No, those aren't really lapsed members. Yes, they are members who have expired. They're members who have lapsed, but they're still part of your regular renewal process, right? I would hope that the large majority of you, if someone expires on January 31st or January 30th, that sometime in February or March, they're getting a, hey, you forgot to renew message, right? As part of your normal process. What I'm talking about here is anybody has not been a member, who used to be a member, who has not been a member for a year or longer. And some of the keys to success when it comes to lapsed members is consistency. As I mentioned with recruitment earlier, don't just hit them once and let them go. Make the assumption that they're dead. They're not literally dead, but that they're dead as a member. you have to hit them multiple times. Sometimes they may come back 2 years later. Sometimes they may come back 3 years later. You have to target. So as I was mentioning before, how do you approach them? What do you say to them? What benefits do you show to them? What is your offer and what is your messaging is going to be really, really important. Again, I always say, and organizations have luck with doing it the way that I don't recommend it. I think it does hurt them in the long run, where I always say, let somebody expire or be gone for at least a year before you offer them something special. So if somebody's been expired for a month, don't come back to them and say, hey, now we're going to give you next year at a discount, or now we're going to give you 15 months for the price of 12. You are training them in many ways to wait for that discount offer, especially if you're gracing them in between, right? If they expire the end of January and you're giving them February as part of their gracing period, and then at the end of February, they all of a sudden get this offer that they can renew for a discount, or they can renew for 15 months for the price of 12, what are you training them to do? You're training them to do that every single year. So you got to be careful about what offers you make and when and to who. And then timing, it really just depends on what you want to do. That kind of goes to what I said. I would not offer anything special or do part of your, I would say, proactive, consistent, meaning once or twice a year, doing an actual win back or lapsed member campaign, whereas either part of your recruitment, you tag this on there and you have a we want you back message as part of your recruitment campaign to the right groups. But you need to figure out when you're going to do it. So you need to make sure that it happens. I would recommend once or twice a year, you reach out to lapsed members and offer them something special. And again, by lapsed members, I mean somebody who's been expired for at least a year. If you can do it, maybe 2 years, but don't offer them something special right away. All right. It's never too early to start. Here's my other scary story. When I was at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, we actually did what was called a renewal at birth. So people would join and their welcome letter actually had an offer in it for them to come back for another year at a discount. That was the only time that we did a discount, but because they had expressed interest, because they had just joined, because they were all excited about their membership, we put an offer out them to join again. That is extreme. Most associations, especially right now, are not going to do that. But my point of that is that you can always add more renewal notices. And in reality, you can, I'm not saying you should, I'm not saying you will, but you can continue to add renewal notices until it costs more to send a renewal notice, whether it's by email, whether it's by direct mail, whether it's a phone call. You can continue to add renewal notices until it costs more than it does to bring in a new member. Because your current members, your existing members, are always going to be easier to bring back than it is going to be to bring in somebody new. So add another renewal notice, add another renewal notice, add another renewal notice. You know, you got to figure out what the wording is. And right now, I agree, it needs to be a much softer sell, but renewals are the lifeblood of an association. That's where your most consistent membership is going to come from. That's where your most dedicated membership comes from. And that's where your biggest ROI on a membership revenue standpoint is going to come from. All right, so those are the few tips that I have about renewal. And now, again, I want you to give a thought to, I changed this one completely to the other side. What were you doing that was really working? Or if you're doing something right now in renewals that is really working, please share that as well, because I think this is valuable to everybody. So we've got about 40 minutes left. And so let's take a couple of minutes to do this. And please, any insights you guys have, anything that is working or also not working right now and or before the crisis hit, please share it, because that's going to be valuable information for everybody. And I'll give you like 2 minutes to think about it and type that in. Thanks, Mandy. Sorry, you made me chuckle over here. All right. I'm going to bring you guys back or to get your attention again. And so that we stay on time, what I was hoping we could do is we're going to do two things at once. Vanessa and I had talked about, because this is a long period of time just sitting here and, you know, it takes its toll sitting in front of the computer for so long. But what I was going to have you guys do is take a few minutes to do the membership renewal activity, which I listed here. Again, this is really for you to get your current stuff, your current strategy process on paper so that you can think about what you want to change. So we were going to take a 5-minute break, but what I'm going to do is, instead of taking a 5-minute break, is we're going to have a working break. And anybody who wants to take a break to do whatever you need to do, stand up and stretch, go tell your kids to get off the Xbox again, whatever it might be, feel free to do that. But what I want you to do at the same time, or in between doing all of those personal things, is think about what this looks like. This is going to be really brief. You could probably take 20 minutes, half an hour, half a day talking through what your targets, key messages, what your current efforts and tactics are, and what your timing is for your renewal strategy. But what I want you to do is just think about what you are doing in these areas and jot down some notes, because the next step is going to be, what do you want to change or review? What of that puzzle that you've just put out there do you want to take a look at, and either because of what's going on with coronavirus right now, or just in general, and some aha came to you about, wait a minute, why are we doing it that way? That's where I want us to really get. So the time, according to my phone, is now 11:25. So let's take till 11:30, 11:31, and try and do this exercise. If there's any big ahas, here you go. What will you do now? What will you do new or revise? So as you're thinking through this, put this into the chat box, and then we'll come back in 5 minutes. So it's now 11:26, so 11:31. Well, it's 11:31 my time, Pacific Coast. So yeah, so let's do that. And thanks, Vanessa. And we'll go from there. So we'll see you guys in about 5 minutes. If you want to turn your cameras off for 5 minutes, go for it. If not, I will just stalk you and look at what you're doing while you're doing your work or leaving. So I'll see you in about 5 minutes. Okay, if you're at your desk, we got about 2 minutes more. All right, I'm going to try and see if I can make everybody bigger to see who's back at their desk or not. This is going to be fun. I could just blow up my entire screen. I see Amy's got guests visiting. I don't know what's going on over there. Mandy's still hanging outside. Now she's eating oatmeal, it looks like. You guys are loving this virtual thing, huh? Oh, or is that mac and cheese? Mac and cheese. Scary that I knew that. But yeah, this is fun. All right, I'm making you guys small again. All right. I got to move my chat box. All right, thanks for everybody who put their thoughts into the box. I appreciate it. I wish we could all be live in a room right now because I would love to have a conversation about anyone who has made changes to their renewals, stopped them, not done them because they are so scared right now about asking for money or they're so concerned about the state of their industry. I would love to have that conversation. I see here that Victoria said that they're thinking about bumping dues by 3 months. I know that, or extending membership renewal terms or dates by 3 months. I know that ASAE just did that. I have my own opinion on that. I think it is awesome and very generous that ASAE did that. If I was the CEO of ASAE, I would not have done it. I'm not the CEO of ASAE, so it really doesn't matter, but I wouldn't have. I think that ASAE does, to the majority of people, provide a solid value, and that value would be worth me renewing my dues, and hopefully it would be for a lot of people. And how that impacts their cash flow, I don't know. It's got to impact their cash flow, so that's another thing to consider if you decide on doing something like that. I understand that it's challenging because you can't really do it for a certain group of people and not for others. But like for me with ASAE, my membership would not have expired until August on its original expiration date. They bumped me to November. Who knows where I'm going to be in August? I mean, I probably would have renewed anyways, but the whole world may have changed by August. So now they potentially took money that could have been in their pocket and pushed it 3 months. Not saying anything negative about what ASAE did. I'm sure that it was a long and hard discussion that they had about that, but there are lots of things that we need to consider. So thank you all very much. I do hope you go through the chat box later because there are some really good ideas in there. We're going to skip this. One is, what is one big aha? You guys have thought that. So now we've had our break. We're good to go. Hopefully everybody got taken care of, whatever they need to take care of. You guys are all refreshed. We've got a little bit less than a half an hour left. And so instead, because this is still a little bit experimental, I was going to have you say what your definition of engagement is. Feel free to enter this as you're thinking about it, but I'm not going to pause to do that because I want to get through the case study. But so here is what I have defined engagement as. And I actually found this, I apologize, I can't remember exactly the resource, but what is engagement? And really, an engagement is a 365-day activity involving regular contact with your members. And I do define this further by saying, I know that no association is actually contacting their members, or I should say very few, are actually contacting their members every day of the year. Our members typically don't want to hear from us every day of the year. We don't have anything to tell them every day of the year. So it's not actual contact 365 days of the year. The key here really, and I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but the key here is really regular contact with members. You want your members to feel like they are part of your community, like they're part of your association 365 days of the year. That's really what is behind this definition. So real quick, some membership engagement tips. Set clear goals. Engagement, to me, in many ways, is a buzzword. We all say we want engagement. We all say we want to engage our members. We want our members to be engaged. What does that mean? Does it mean that they're taking a lot of classes? Does it mean that they're spending a lot of money with us? Does it mean that they are volunteering? How do you define engagement? And if you have ever tried or want to try doing engagement scoring, those goals are going to be what you're going to base that on. You need to figure out what your goal, what your objective is with getting them to be engaged. The ultimate goal is to get them to renew, but before that, or in more detail, what is that? What is the answer? Connie put out in the chat box, how much contact is too much contact with your members? I personally, this is not a great answer, but I believe it. It all depends on your members. And it depends what their wants are and what their needs are and what your role is in either their professional or their personal lives. There are some organizations that may be great curators of information. So members may want to come to your association or get a newsletter from you every day because you're providing valuable information every day. I have a client that is trying to put together, they feel like their members were getting too much information, so they're trying to do a weekly newsletter. The first draft that I saw was like 3 pages of information because they couldn't pare it down. They didn't know how to pare it down. In the first draft, they didn't know what to pare down. So, because their perception is members are getting too much. I think that if you are, most of the time when somebody says how much contact is too much contact, it means how much email is too much email. And I think you have to set some baselines and then either add or subtract from there and see what open rates look like, because that's really going to be your definition. If people are reading your information, then keep doing it. If they're not, then you got to cut back or you got to figure out another way to deliver it. So member engagement, set clear goals, determine your delivery method. As I said before, there are no trick ponies anymore, but every choice you make for delivery method impacts how many resources you use. It can impact your dollars, it can impact your people, it can impact your technology. So you need to figure out how you're going to do it. You need to set out a schedule and determine what's going to have the greatest impact based on the resources that you have available. Be consistent. Membership is not a welcome letter, a welcome back letter, and then 9 months later, it's a renewal notice saying, pay us, hope you had a great year. That's not what it is. So you need to be in regular contact with them. Back to Connie's question, how much is too much? Only you can really decide that. I truly do believe that sort of a drip approach is going to be what's best. You can't hit them over the head day one with everything. And you also can't not give them any information and hope they figure it all out themselves. So the next tip that I just put up, determine your resources needed. You can't do more than your resources will allow. I think technology can help us in a lot of ways right now with marketing automation and things like that, but you can't have a monthly drip campaign that requires copywriting, that requires list pulls, that requires technology. And if you don't have any of those things, you can't do it, right? So you need to, as part of your engagement strategy development, you need to figure out what resources you have. Use what you already do. This is another surprising thing to me. And I guess it really shouldn't be surprising anymore that sometimes associations look to create, and I think this is probably true with for-profit organizations too, they look to create new things as opposed to adding on to what they're already doing. So are you sending out a magazine or a journal? Could you put a letter in there that briefly describes some other benefits that somebody else might want to take advantage of? Do you ship product to members, and you could put an insert in there that describes some other things? So before you start looking externally, try and look internally and see if you can piggyback on things that are already happening. Understand the why members come and welcome them, members join and welcome them properly. this I could talk about for a long time. It's about the members and the member why, not about the association why. It isn't about telling every new member what you do. This sort of goes back to marketing 101, products versus features, features versus benefits, all that kind of conversation. But you need to understand why your members are there and what they're looking for, and then talk to them and or welcome them properly. All right, spend time promoting your long-term members. Not going to spend a lot of time on that. People want recognition. Members want recognition. So as opposed to necessarily giving them something, make sure that they know that you value them, that they're important, and the longer they're members, they become equally, if not more important. Understand their current, hold on, I got too many things over here. Their current why and address it. I added this one the other day because of what's going on right now. Their current why, what they are looking for you as an association to provide to them today, could be very different than what it was 3 weeks ago. So you need to understand what your audience is looking for. You need to understand what your members are looking for. You do need to maintain your role as it has always been. And a real quick example is an organization I was talking to tried to put together this white paper, and it included some regulations and things in it that the association has never been known for doing that. That's not their role. That's not their area of expertise. It could potentially have put them in some legal trouble. I think, I'm not a lawyer, but I think it could have. And I pushed back on the executive director and I said, that's not what you guys do. If there are known and respected organizations that are putting out those kind of things, tell your members what they are and tell your members where to find them. That's the value you guys can provide. So you need to understand what their why is, especially right now, and you need to address it. Remember to pay members through for their time through recognition. We kind of just talked about that with long-term members. Start a conversation. Members oftentimes are looking to be part of something. They're looking to be part of a community. They're looking to provide input. They're looking to get advice. So the more you can start these conversations and provide avenues and vehicles for them to talk to each other, the more engaged they will be. And the more likely they will be to take things on their own and to run with them, so that you're, as staff members, are not the only ones who are trying to push stuff. All right. So again, I want to get through the case study. We've got about 18 minutes left, but let's do real quick. On the engagement side of things, just take a quick thought, and I had these here as well. Just take 1 minute to 2 minutes about what your engagement strategy is. Just jot down some notes or jot them in the chat, whichever you want to do. And then what is one thing that you want to review or revise? What is one thing within your engagement process that you want to take a closer look at as you have time? It can be closer look at because of what's going on currently, or it could just be a closer look at because all of a sudden you're thinking about this stuff and you go, wait a minute, why are we doing that? I don't understand why we're doing that. We need to review it. We're not going to review it right now. But so let's take a couple of minutes, and then we'll have about 15 minutes for me to blow through the case study. And then I'm happy to stay on for a few minutes after if anybody has questions, or Vanessa, we can follow up with those later. I like what Heidi put in there, put an engagement score system to see who's at risk. The more you can, that goes back to my comment about using your data. So if you can develop that data and use it so that you can maximize your use of resources, I think that's awesome. All right, cool. It is 11:44 my time. Vanessa, you can help me out again. 2:44 your time, 2:45 your time. And so we're going to jump into the case study. Like I said, if anybody has any questions, I'm going to probably skip over a few slides. But if anybody has any questions or wants more detail, feel free to either reach out to Vanessa or me, and I'm happy to speak more. Bottom line is, the client that I worked with was a regional organization. They were state-based, and it was trade. Real quick story, it was crazy what they had, the way their governance was set up. They actually had, I'm gonna make this as short as possible because you guys don't need all the details. But what happened was 2 organizations merged together, and as opposed to just merging the 2 organizations, they had a joint board, which had an executive director. They had individual boards for the segments that they created, which were basically the original organizations, and they each had a board. And so they had a CEO president who oversaw the entire organization. They had an executive director of what was the biotech side, which was MD Bio, and they had an executive director of the other board, which was the technology side, which was MD Tech. So if you guys think you have problems with your boards now, imagine if you were dealing with 3 boards, and they were dealing with 3 boards. So that's basically the lay of the land. There was no real strong membership strategy. They were basically, and I'll click through these, they had a very small staff. Membership numbers and trends, membership was steady, but it was stagnant. It wasn't growing. Their past membership renewal strategy, the reason I'm blowing through this part is this is not the most important part. The most important part is what we did to address it. So their past membership renewal strategy was basically they had anniversary date renewals. So people were renewing and expiring every month. They were sending 2 renewal notices, 1 an invoice by direct mail, which did not actually come with a letter. So it was just an invoice in an envelope. And then they had a part-time person who was making phone calls to people saying, hey, you're about ready to expire. Do you want to pay? As we could guess, not very optimal. They also had a 90-day grace period. And so you would expire at the beginning of the month. If you didn't pay, you still got your benefits for 90 days for no reason, really. They didn't know why that happened. They just did it, and it continued to work that way. And so all of this was pretty much handled by a part-time person. So that gives you kind of the background. The results, as you could guess, membership was disorganized. Members didn't get any consistent communication. Revenue was being, in my opinion, I am not a proponent in any way in offering grace periods. I think when you expire, you're done. You should be shut off. You do not need, I understand that there are certain instances where if it's a large entity, they may need to get approval and all sorts of other things. So yeah, and I've seen in Marketing General's study year after year after year, it does show that groups that offer grace periods have higher retention rates than those that don't. It's causation, not correlation, or correlation, not causation. I think it's just happenstance, and maybe it is because they give people longer time to do it. I'm not a fan of it, and you guys can say I'm crazy, which is fine. I just don't like it. I think if you expire, no need to give anybody anything unless it's a unique situation. So members being trained, there was no penalty for paying late. And as you could guess, member retention was a concern and also an opportunity because they were doing it so poorly that there was only one way to go, which was up. So their goals were a 365-day communication strategy, a multimedia approach, and as you can see, a lot of this is what I was suggesting earlier. Targeted communication, so they had targeted communications to each individual group. So if you were part of the bio group, you got communication that was based on benefits you would receive that made sense and were applicable to you. Tech, same thing, and then they had industry partners, so they got another thing. This, I think, is very important. Associations are very good at asking people to pay for a book, to pay to register for a webinar, to pay to attend the annual conference. That's not the type of communication that creates engagement. That's not the type of communication, even if you are offering a discount for members, if that's the only communication you're doing, all you're doing is selling. You're not actually creating engagement. You're not actually really communicating. So we wanted to do outreach to members when they weren't asking for money because this was a very events-driven group. So pretty much all the emails they were sending out and all the communications were, hey, come to this event, come to that event, pay for this event, pay for that, and then renew, right? So that's not going to work. And then we wanted more interpersonal connection. We wanted more interpersonal communication so that it was one-to-one, where they actually had an invoice that said who the person was and things like that. And then also, because it was regional, and from what I understand about ESSAE members, many of you guys are regional, you have the ability to truly create face-to-face community. And so you want, as staff, to also have connection to your members. It's not just member to member, it's staff to member as well. So you want to create that more interpersonal communication, which we wanted to do. And no grace periods. I told them that it wasn't the right way to go, and you'll see how it worked for them. So real quick, this is actually what we put together. I know it's a lot, and I'm going to point out just a couple of key things. It started right as they either joined or renewed. I think that for whatever reason, associations forget to welcome people back. We're very good at welcoming them. We're very good at onboarding them year one, but we often forget to welcome them back. They just came back, they renewed, awesome. They get an automatic notification when they pay that says, thank you for paying. And maybe it has a letter attached to it or some text that makes sense, but we're not great about doing that. So we put together a schedule of weekly new and renewal welcomes. But one of the things we did, they automatically, when they paid, they got that automatic sent by system email. But we had the executive directors, like I said, there were two that were really critical in this piece. One was for the bio side, one was for the tech side. They called new members and said, welcome, I am the executive director of MD Bio, and as a biotechnology person, I wanted to introduce myself, whatever. I'll show you some samples, but it was targeted, it was segmented, it was based on connecting them with the most appropriate executive director based on who they were when it came to their profession. We sent a renewal welcome email or a welcome email that was about 3 weeks after they had joined, and that came from the membership manager. The reason it came from the membership manager was we wanted them to have a contact name and the contact information for someone who could help them with like logistical type stuff. Oh, my address changed. Oh, I need to change the contact person for this. Oh, what do I do to register for a conference? Those kind of things. We didn't want the executive directors to get those calls, so we sent that purposely from the membership manager. And then we had the executive directors do a check-in letter. I'll show you guys that because it was handwritten. And as you could tell, all throughout this process, it was consistent from the day they joined until actually 60 days after they expired. So they sent all of these different communications, some by email, some by mail, some phone. So to go back to the suggestions I gave you guys before, it was multimedia, multi-touch, personalized, targeted, segmented, all the things that I've mentioned a couple of times. So that's what they came up with. Here's an example of their 90-day renewal letter. And what I really wanted to point out, again, to reinforce some of the points that I made before, renew today, right? Tell them to renew today. And actually, when you renew your membership by January 8th, you'll receive, they offered tech bucks. They called them tech bucks. It was sort of a, all right, we'll give you $69 towards an event, towards a meeting, towards a book, towards a whatever it might be. The other important part here is that this was all variable data printed. So all of this was all filled out. And then here, these benefits were tweaked based on whether they were an MD Bio person or an MD Tech person. We didn't send the same benefits to everybody. We sent slightly different benefits depending on where you were, what side of the organization you were in, because as I mentioned earlier, they don't want to read every benefit and have to sort through 20 bullet points to see the tenor for them. Yeah, they didn't want to do that. So we purposely did that. This was a letter. Here's a renewal script. We gave them scripts so that they could work from them, not that they had to read them. And I think before you do any telemarketing, if you're using volunteers or staff, you have to make sure that they are cool with speaking the script, not reading the script, because we all have had those calls where we're like, wow, this person is just reading off a script. That sounds horrible. We want to create personal connection, not just have somebody read it. You know, one of the other things that we did that was cool here, and you just got to be a little bit careful about security, but they actually took credit card payment over the phone. So you can do that. And number one goal was if you actually talk to somebody, get that renewal, right? Get it right away. Here's another example of a letter that they sent at Expire, just reminding, your membership in Tech Council Merit expires now, don't delay, respond today. We actually sent out a pre-printed invoice so they didn't have to do anything, which is right here. So you can see typical standard direct marketing 101, final notice. This is the notice you're gonna get. All of this was filled out. Everything, you can sort of tell that I whited out the pricing here, but everything was included in there. So then they could just total it up, send it, or they could go on the website and do it. But this came with an actual letter that said, this is time to renew. You guys just saw the letter. So again, the easier you can make it to renew for people, the easier it's going to be for them to do it, and the higher response you're going to get. And here is a post-expire email, as I was talking about before. Don't let people just walk away. Try and get them back and do what you can. This came from the membership manager. And so that was important. Again, renew now. You've got to renew now. Here are the benefits that you're going to get if you don't, and you're missing those already, so renew now. So that's pretty straightforward. Here's their weekly welcome call script, and you can steal any of this if you want. A couple of key points to bring out. This was done by the executive directors, as I mentioned, and this is, and obviously the executive director would say they're calling from, and this is important for them. It shows the segmenting, it shows the targeting, it shows the understanding of who they're calling, right, of who their members are, calling from whichever division they were from. And this person personally welcomed them. They explained to them who they are, because it was local or regional, and they also were attending a lot of events. They would say, hey, I'm going to be at the next event, which is taking place on blah, blah, blah. Can you join me? Would you like to join me? I'd be excited to meet you, that kind of stuff. So again, and I think that regional and local organizations have a better success rate at this than national organizations in forming that true local community. And if you're going to be at events, bring everybody together, right? I know that this is challenging right now. Maybe it's through Zoom chat right now. Maybe it's through virtual happy hours, whatever it might be. But there are ways to do it. You've just got to set expectations, kind of like Vanessa and I did when we started. And you've got to let people know what's coming. And you can still do it, but it's the personal connection that really matters. Here is, if anybody can read it, this was one of their handwritten notes. And literally, as you can tell, this is a handwritten note. They did these once a month. They sent them out to members just to check in. Tech members are very excited about the things we are working on. There's nothing being sold here. It is just, hey, it just so happens that I was able to get Happy New Year, so this is cool, right? On January 2nd, Happy New Year. Wanted to send a quick note to check in and let you know that this is what's going on and make sure everything's cool. That's it. It was just a check-in letter, which I think just the fact that it was handwritten, people are going to get this and go, wow, you wrote me a note. Who writes anybody a note anymore? Especially a member from a staff person. So I thought that was awesome that they were able to do it. All right, so short story long, the good news was that all of this activity ended up in membership renewals increasing from, sorry, you guys are behind my faces now. Membership renewal increased from 74% to 79%, which is actual percentage points. It wasn't a 5% increase, it was 5 percentage point increase, which was huge. 70%, the other thing I didn't mention was we stopped gracing periods. We bumped everything earlier. We moved all of the renewal efforts earlier so that they started hearing from us earlier. And so therefore they were paying earlier. And so 70%, which it was lower than that before, it was about 50% paid by the renewal rate. 70% ended up paying by actual expire date. They didn't grace, not that many people graced any longer. 30% paid ahead of time, which was huge. So we got much earlier, sometimes on the first renewal notice, which was now going out 90 days before expire. People were paying on that. And this, I think, is, even though money in pockets is what ultimately says your level of success, this is what I think was their level of success, because this shows what their renewals are going to be over time. Members have given positive feedback regarding the consistent contact about their needs. So here are some samples that I pulled from them. Sorry, you guys are taking over my screen again. Thanks for the handwritten letter. It's nice to know you care about me and more than just my money, right? Awesome. That's what we want. Relationship, connection. My membership in Tech Council of Maryland is very valuable, and I appreciate your call to make sure everything is going well. If I need anything in the future, I know who to contact. That was part of our goal, right? Interpersonal communication, not salesy, forming a relationship. I'm very happy with our membership. You guys are doing all the right things, like this phone call to make sure, sorry, I'm blocking on my chat again. We're happy with TCM. Thanks for checking in. This is the real data, right? You can't have this data and this kind of result and this kind of feedback and not have any renewals. But as long as the two go hand in hand, that's exactly what you want. You want people to feel connected to your organization. You want people to know the people that are working at your organization. You want them to understand the value based on who they are and what their segment is or what their role is within the industry. That's what your engagement strategy is all about. So that's what we did. And that's really all that I have. But there's a couple of questions. So here's just little highlights, lesson learned. Membership is everyone's job. And you guys can read these. Strong processes and procedures help everybody. Targeting messages to audience helps your retention. And multi-channel marketing is crucial. But I mean, you guys, this is sort of what I've been saying over and over again throughout the presentation. And so this just reinforces it because this was successful. And I've actually worked on this type of approach with a number of other groups, and it almost always is successful. So that's why I wanted to present it to you guys. Real quick, we're now at 12:01. Sorry, Vanessa. Very little difference between non-engaged members and lapsed members. This came from Decision to Join, which if you haven't read it, it's a little bit outdated now. It's done by ASAE. Members who are not involved lie perilously close to former members in the overarching assessment of the value they derive from associations. If former members are thought to be dead, the uninvolved are close to comatose. Again, this tells you to involve and engage your members. You can't have them join or renew, send them your normal stuff, and then 9 months later expect them to renew. There's so much more to that. And I think to close right now, there's even more value to that. There's more value in showing your value in a non-salesy way to your members. And so I see there are some questions here. I'm going to close with that. And then Vanessa, we can go through the questions, but that's the formal end to the PowerPoint. And then I can answer questions. All right. Is that cool?
Yeah, very cool. Sorry, I had to unmute myself.
Yeah, no, I know, I saw. All right. So the first question I have is from Mandy, who's outside eating macaroni and cheese. How do you set that up? Is it software or something that you manually create? We actually worked with a printer who did that for us. You put in the fields and you give them an Excel spreadsheet and they merge it all together. You can also, if you have a small enough number, you can do that on your own. You just take the spreadsheet and through Word, or I guess Word is pretty much the only word processing software anybody uses anymore. You can merge them together and print it out. And so you can do it that way. The invoices, Mandy, if that's what you're talking about, the invoices actually came from their AMS. There was a form in there that they created that was able to merge everything together. So they did it that way.
Sorry,
so
I was talking about the engagement score system.
Oh, that
That was part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't have an answer to that. I do know that I have seen, I just actually participated on a webinar the other day, and they walked through the engagement score process. And basically what the first step you need to take is assigning points to whatever the activities are that you want people to engage in. So if it's, let's just say, this is a horrible example right now, but they attended the annual conference. Well, that's a lot of money and they got to travel and blah, 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 blah. Well, that's 20 points. Oh, well, they're on a committee. All right, that's 5 points. Oh, well, you could even go as far as, all right, they wrote an article for us, that's 2 points. And then you do that. And the example I saw was actually done by an AMS vendor. And what they did was they inserted those numbers into the AMS, and then they could pull reports based on that. And they used it to see who was at risk, really. You could use it both ways, right? You could see who's not doing anything, or you could use it to reward the people who are doing a lot, or the people or the companies that are doing a lot. But that first step is truly figuring out what you want to reward and how you want to value it and how you want to assign points to it, and then you can go from there. All right. So sorry for answering the wrong question. And then I apologize, S. Ciccone, I don't see your first name. I saw your picture, so I know you're a man. But do you actually mail the periodic letters? They did everything. They mailed the letters. They had it set up so it would go out once a month, even though they were tracking renewal dates by actual renewal date. We were still mailing like once a month just because of resources. They were printing them and mailing them once a month. As I mentioned, which my answer to Mandy, which wasn't the question she asked, they actually did merge them and send them. So they were actually mailing once a month. I think that right now, mail is huge and real important because not many people are mailing. I think there is some fear that people don't want to get their mail right now. I don't know how we deal with that one, but mail is going to jump out. Direct mail got such a bad rap for so long that so many people stopped doing it that anything you mail now stands out. And so if you're not doing it, I would seriously suggest that you think about it. And I think that's it, Vanessa. I don't see anything else in here.
Well, if nobody else has any questions, I mean, it's oh, there's Heidi answering for Mandy. So we'll save that in the chat. So Mandy, Heidi did give you her, she gave you her email address and everything to touch base with her, so. All right, if nobody else has any questions, I'm gonna wrap us up. Thank you, Scott. We really appreciate your time today and your perspective. This was a great reminder of how we can continue to engage with our members, especially now with the crisis going on, that we provide value and community for them going forward. So thank you to also for everyone for attending this afternoon, taking the time out of this beautiful day to participate in a webinar. Reminder just to tune in next week for the final session in the TripleM series. It's going to be Wednesday, April 8th at 1:30 Eastern with Kiki L'Italienne. And I just want to wish you all the best. Stay safe and healthy and have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.